It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, how is it going? And welcome to the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. It is Tuesday, December 12th, and so happy for you joining us. We are ready to start another day together with the Lord. So subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So today we have an exciting podcast for you. We have Provi In The Media, the practical word study, and of course commentaries, updates, and news on what is happening around the world in this history today. All right, everyone, how are you doing? And yes, it is Tuesday already, getting into the meat of the week. Don't forget, we have Q&A Thursday coming up in a couple days, so get those questions ready. Send them to me whenever you can. And if you haven't yet, leave a like and a comment below to build our community. Yes, click that like button for today's video, and I really hope that everyone... I'm very thankful and happy that everyone is joining us every weekday on the Morning Star Drive, so let's get up and support each other each and every day. Yes, Sunday message title, there's two of them this week. It was done because there was absolutely God's will behind it, and where there is a will, there is a way. Okay, guys, so it is Tuesday, and I got some big news about where I'm going to be by next week, and yes, I finally bought my tickets to Malaysia. So I finally got them. I have my tickets ready. I will be visiting, I'll be leaving on the 18th, which is one more week. So I'll be leaving next Monday, which is about 7 days from now. And I'm pretty excited because there's one thing that I do get to do, and I'm hopeful that I will be able to visit the airport church, Taoyuan. Right, I'm hoping to visit the airport church because I heard it's another really, really big church here in Taiwan, and I just want to see the atmosphere. And I heard there's a male leader over there on that side. I did see one male leader over at the Lord's Victory Church too. But yeah, it's very, very cool. Hopefully I'll get a chance to visit. Hopefully they'll allow me to go visit that church too. So yes, I will be visiting one more church on Sunday. Which is one more week. I am super happy to be able to stay in Taiwan just a little bit longer. I really like it here. Like, this is the first time I've actually been able to kind of see everything going around, and I want to stay a little bit longer, and I'm glad I could, and I just get a kind of more of an overall view of what Taiwan is like. I'm hoping, it's one more week left, so I'm hoping to get as many things done as possible. I've extended my trip twice already here in Taiwan, so I think it's a sign that I do like it here. But I think it's worth it to see as much as I can. But isn't it kind of weird, though, that it's so, like, yeah, it's kind of weird how I don't plan anything. I just do as I'm inspired. Like, it almost feels too relaxed or too comfortable, like this week's message, right? Which totally against this week's message, but... kind of going by the inspiration, and finally it's done. I got my ticket for next week, so that's quite exciting too. But I'm really, really happy that I can stay for another week also. Oh, and I did something more spiritual today, guys. I haven't taught in a long time, and I taught the history lesson to a newcomer that was in America, and I taught them the first part of it this morning. So it's interesting because I think the history lesson is not taught a lot in churches these days. And this was something that, like most people, when they think history lesson, they think about teaching about Sunsim's life and what Sunsim went through in his life. That's actually not the history lesson. The history lesson that was originally taught by Sunsim in the past is like the 30th lesson. And it's about the parallels of repeating history of the Old Testament and New Testament and how it leads into today's time. Right? It talks about the parallel history of the Old Testament, New Testament, and I don't think that many people actually teach this lesson. It's a huge lesson. It's a ton of information. I have to split it up into parts because there's too much info on it. But even one time, like when Sunsim does a passing ceremony, he usually teaches the history lesson. And when he teaches the history lesson, like I've heard it on cassette tape for 10 hours. Like I couldn't listen to the whole thing because my Korean wasn't that good anyways, but it was a history lesson, passing ceremony, 10 hours on one lesson just because there's so much history to go over. So when I was looking at that, like I don't do it any justice because I'll do it in like 3 hours. but I split into two. Like today, this morning or yesterday morning, it'll be a Monday morning. It took me an hour and a half to go over the Old Testament, and then I'll be going over the New Testament and finishing it off. And I think in 2 days I'll be doing the last part of the lecture there too. So, how many of you guys have actually heard the history lesson? Right? Like the actual full history lesson. You go through the entire history of the Old Testament. You talk about, the intertestamental period between Malachi and Jesus. And then you talk about Jesus and all early Christian history, all the bishops and saints. And you go into like the history of the New Testament. You put them together and you see that how God's working in like the last 2,000 years too. Like how many guys have actually heard that full lesson? Like that's something I'd be interested to hear if anyone's actually heard that full lesson, because I think it's such a groundbreaking and powerful lesson. I hope it's something that you guys can, if you haven't, you guys can listen to it. I hope it's something that you guys can all listen to. It's really, really powerful. Like for me, just preparing it, it took me weeks to prepare. There's just too much information. You gather all the information, then eventually at the end, what do? You kind of just, you have to summarize some of it so it's not going to be like a 10-hour lesson, right? So yeah, the history lesson is something that I did think that I do teach, and I did a lot of research on it, but I don't even think I teach the full one. I think it's probably after you teach that you'll go into Sunseam's history too, but I'm not sure because I haven't actually heard Sunseam teach this one either. The poll. Oh, you know what's kind of interesting? Yesterday, remember I talked about my realization when I went to Hualien, and I told you I was like just so enamored, just staring at the river, right? And it was quite interesting because one of the people who was actually there with me on the tour, they just thought I was disinterested, like in seeing what like the images in the rocks and stuff. And one of the realizations they had, which I thought was kind of cool, is sometimes we're so caught up in just like, hey, look at this. Oh, look at this image here. Look at this image here. When, part of it is us, having a conversation with the Holy Spirit, having a conversation with God. And sometimes we're too caught up in the moment, like, oh, we got to show you everything like this. But they were surprised by my realization too. But it's interesting because we really don't know what's going on in people's heads either. Right. So, I thought it was quite cool talking to someone who was actually there during the tour, wondering what the heck is going through this guy's mind. But then they realized, oh, he was discussing with the Holy Spirit kind of thing. So I thought that was kind of cool too, because you get to see both sides of what's going through your mind and also what's going through other people's minds. And one of the reasons, like, I didn't want to tell people like, hey guys, shut up, I'm talking to the Holy Spirit. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't even want to say, hey, please don't talk to me, I'm talking to the Holy Spirit. Like, it seems kind of arrogant, or it seems kind of like, I don't want people to be like being too conscious of me. They all have to be quiet because I'm talking to the Holy Spirit, whatever it is. So that's why I never really said, I just kind of, looked and watched at what was going on. So it was quite interesting for me because I can see through their perspective and understand what they're thinking, and I can understand my perspective too. But I thought that was kind of cool to hear the other side of it also. Oh, and by the way, this week's poll about being late for church and stuff like that, well, not being late, like how early do you come to church? This poll is not there to judge people, right? I'm totally not doing that, right? It's not about whether you're to church on time or not. It's about what the reality is, and also what is stopping us. Like, it makes you think more deeply about ourselves. It's like, oh, if I'm not on time, what's stopping me from doing it? Right? Like, let me give you an example. One of the realities, there's reality and what's stopping you. Those are two different things. Reality is, if you have small kids at home, there are some things you cannot control. Kids will be kids. Some won't wake up. Some will scream and shout. Some will make it really difficult. You can't control it because it's your child, right? And it takes time for a child to get used to this type of thing. Or it takes, a child doesn't care about being late or early, right? They're learning as they go how important something is. Right? They'll just do everything according to their own time, especially babies too. So I think like that's reality. Sometimes you can't, like sometimes there's an accident on the freeway. That is reality. That is not an every week thing. That's kind of a reality situation, right? There's an emergency that happens with your family. That is reality. That is not like an everyday type of thing. It's most likely that the group of people that probably have the least amount of excuses are the people who are single and don't work on a Saturday night. Those are probably like the people who have like the least amount of excuses. Some Some people will think this is a reality, but this is actually just an excuse or a reason that you kind of have is, oh, I came home late last night because I was out with my friends. That's not a reason. That's more of an excuse because you have a choice to go out late or not. You don't have to go out, right? And, someone says, if I said this to someone and then the person says to me, well, I've been working all week and I'm like, so I need some entertainment. Like, I understand that too, but there's many different ways instead of staying up until like midnight or 1 a.m. out with your friends. That's completely different. It's completely different, right? So this type of poll allows you to think deeply about the whys. Right? Why are you early? What's the thing that you take away from being early? What's the benefits you get from it? What's something that you're like, oh, this is so great. This is why I like to be early, right? Because for those that are early and are benefiting from it, they're the ones that have to give the testimonies of what you are benefiting from it. So other people say, that's what I'm missing out on, right? And then for the other people who are always late, you have to think to yourself is, oh, what do I need to plan ahead? What can I do better? What can I pray about, right? Or what can I pray about to make the situation better for Sunday morning, right? Like for myself, one thing I noticed about myself when I was younger, I had so much energy and passion for this history. Like getting up 45 minutes before, getting ready was super easy. I could do it really fast and I'll still be early to church, right? But as you get older, the reality is your body is not as strong as it was before. You're not going to be able to do the same things like go to sleep at 2 a.m. and then wake up at 6 or wake up at 7, whatever it is, right? Your physical body can't keep up as you get older. It's just the way your body works. You can't sleep at 2, 3 a.m. and then wake up for pre-dawn every day. You just can't. So for me is, I will wake up, I will make sure that I wake up super early for service. I have my alarm to get up to start getting ready for service is 6 a.m. And I like it because I can take a shower and guess what? I can take an extra long shower. I can take extra long picking my clothes. I can take extra long doing my hair. I can walk around the house, do work on my laptop, then I get ready to go and I easily, and even with, all the things that I did, I still get to church early, right? Comfortably, when you're up really early, you can think about other stuff and you could just get ready to go to church. Now, this is me as a single guy. I don't have family. I don't have children, which makes things, if you have children, it makes things 10 times more complicated and difficult, right? And I think this is something we can all really think about for the end of this year, right? What can we do better for next year, And I thought this was like, I thought this was a good poll because it's at the end of the year. You could kind of reflect back at what your life was like in 2023. Did you come to church? For me, I'll be like, I probably spent 9 months of the year, almost 8 months of the year doing it online. And then finally when Sunseam says, go to church, I was like, okay, fine. And then I went to church, right? So I remember when I was in Vancouver, I think one time I was late because I forgot the time. So I thought it was 9:50, but it was actually 9:40. I was like, oh, where did I get that? And I realized like, oh, this was another church that I went to. And some churches are at 10 a.m. I just got, on that day, it just had a brain fart. I was like, oh man, I got to be there even earlier. Because what I do is when I was in Vancouver, I get ready super early. I go to the cafe to get a coffee before service around 7:30 a.m. So I'm up at 6, get everything ready by 7:30, go to the cafe, drink a coffee, spend my time, and then head over to the church after, and I have plenty of time, right? But there I was thinking, I had more time than I actually thought. So I'll do my best to get to church around 9:25 to 9:30, so I'll have enough time to settle in and pray before going to church, right? Or before the service starts. So yeah, that's kind of for me. That's the way that I get over it. Is I want to be. I know this week's message. I want to be comfortable and not rushing going to church, right? I was talking to. I met a friend yesterday from Taiwan, and actually I've been meeting a ton of people who are running in America and Canada and other places like that too. And I met a friend from who was running in America, right? And the issue about, especially with this week's Sunday message, the issue of money came up, right? And head leaders. And of course, it's not only just this week's Sunday message, but, this subject came up because what we saw with, KJS and the money scandals that we saw with the people around her and stuff like that too. And, and then of course, this week's message is about not being comfortable, and the verse about being rich pops up. It's harder, where Jesus said it's very difficult for someone who's rich to come into the kingdom of God, right? So it was a topic that was brought up as I was meeting a friend. And there were some things, it was a very interesting conversation because when it comes to money and how it affects a leader, or how it affects anyone in any corporation, in any organization or any church, right? Excuse me. And I was reminded about there is this speaker that studies on motivation. His name is Daniel Pink, and he's got a TED Talk and everything else. But he also talks about money and motivation. So Dan Pink, you can see his TED Talk about motivation. Dan Pink, DANPINK, and he talks about two different types of motivation. One is intrinsic and one is extrinsic, and they're very different, right? Because extrinsic motivation is driven by external forces like money or even praise. Intrinsic motivation is something that comes from within. Can be as simple as the joy that you feel after you accomplish something very, very challenging. Like you just finished 70 days of prayer condition. You have this intrinsic feeling of like, oh, I'm so inspired, and you get this joy from it, right? But, motivation is not really an easy thing where it's like give them money and it's done. No, motivation is very tricky. There's so many different things that affect motivation, right? So the big questions come up is, how can we motivate people to become the best that they can be? How do we motivate ourselves, right? Or you guys ever had this, that sometimes you're running towards a goal and suddenly you lose steam and then you just kind of tire out before you cross the finish line. Why do we lose motivation, right? When we're heading towards a goal, right? And that's something that we have to look at when it comes to, say, head leading or leadership, right? And in his talk, he talks about how money was once thought to be the best way to motivate an employee, right? Or someone who's working. If you wanted someone to stay with your company, if you wanted someone to perform better, you just simply had to offer more financial incentives. But with a lot of research in psychology, they said that money is an extrinsic motivational factor, but it has also become useless in some sectors, in some parts of a job. It's no longer a motivator in some parts, right? So when does money become a motivation, and when does money stop being a motivation? That's very, very interesting, right? So the one thing that we have to make, I know that we, especially when it comes to religion and when it comes to business or money, like those are two things we try to stay away from. Like, head leaders shouldn't be making too much money, right? And the answer is, what the heck is too much money? Okay? So we have to think about this very carefully. What the heck is too much money? Because think about this. When I was a head leader, I was getting paid $1,200 per month, which is it is a third of what you get at McDonald's for working full-time at McDonald's, okay? So that's, but the reality of living in this physical realm is you have to earn a living. You have to earn a living, right? And what Daniel Pink talks about is there's something called the baseline reward. A baseline reward is you make enough money, you have benefits, and you have some perks. And these are just kind of like baseline rewards, right? However, the problem is if someone's baseline rewards are not adequate, the person's going to focus on, this is so unfair that I'm only getting paid this much. Or they're going to feel the anxiety of their circumstance because they're not getting enough. They can't afford this, they can't afford that. They're going into debt, right? And in this situation, when you don't have a baseline reward, there is very little motivation at all. Like, I'm not getting enough. Why should I put my all into this, right? So the research comes out is the best use of money as a motivator is to pay people enough to take the issue of money off the table, right? Which means in order for people to be motivated to do their best in a job or a situation, you need to take as many obstacles off the table so it's no longer a factor that demotivates them. Which means if someone gets paid adequately, right? Like they get paid enough, then money is no longer an issue and they can focus on becoming a better pastor or a better leader, right? Like, for instance, if you don't get paid enough, or it's not equitable to someone else in the same industry, like other pastors in the world, if it's far below the poverty line, then money becomes an issue and people can be more tempted by money and do the wrong thing. But if you pay enough, the question, if you pay enough, then that's off the table. So the question right now that we all have to think about is how much is enough, okay? So imagine I was getting paid $1,200 a month to do a full-time position. It's more than full-time because you work more than 40 hours a week as a head leader. True, right? So if you look at the industry standards, right? Like the money's enough to live off. But if it's not enough to live off, then that's a problem, right? Or if it's not what most people are getting in that same profession, then people think it's not fair, okay? So here's the question is, what is enough? So let me ask, so the easiest way I can talk about this is I want to ask you guys that question as people who are working in the world. And I would say, would it not be fair to say that the spiritual work of head leading should be just as important as your job to pay for your family or to live off of? And of course it is. You can't separate the two, which means my question to you is, imagine like say in America, the average person, right, is making something like $44,000 a year, right? And that's roughly about $3,400 a month, right? How many of you working your jobs are going to be satisfied and just say that, oh, yeah, that's enough, just give me $3,000 a month? Most of you would say, no, I want more than that. Like, and of course, like if you're in another country like Malaysia or like say Singapore, of course, you're going to see what the average or what is suitable, right? If you're a teacher, you're going to get paid $24,000 a month or $24,000 a year? You'd be like, no way. You're going to pay me $2,000 a month to be a teacher. Do you know how much work that is? You'd be against it. You'd totally be against it, right? So you can't separate what would be satisfying for you working in the world compared to what is satisfying for a pastor living in the same world, paying for the same prices for things. You know what I mean? Like if I'm getting $1,200 and then all of a sudden I get $3,000, is $3,000 too much? When that is like below the average in America? Do you know what I mean? Like you have to kind of think about that in that sense of not thinking so much in like, oh, no, 2,000 is enough per month. Well, is 2,000 enough per month for you? Is it enough for you? Like that's the question you should be asking yourself. Would that be enough for you? And the answer is most people would say absolutely not, right? So what I'm talking about is I'm trying to get people's minds out of this wrong perspective that, it has to, you can't give them too much. But too much, I would say, like for instance, it would depend on what job you had. If you're in charge of a church that has 10,000 people, you should be being paid enough for someone who's doing a church that size. I think that's fair. I think it's absolutely fair. Right? If you're in a small church, it's going to be less, right? If it's a medium size, it's going to be more. If it's a mega church, it should be way more, right? So we have to understand that, we're living in a physical world and pastors are paying the same amount for their food as you guys are. And if like $2,500 is not enough for you a month, how could that be enough for a pastor? Do you know what I mean? Like that's the thing that we have to really, really think about. Right? So let me give you an example of how if you take money off the table, there's less corruption. Like for instance, politicians are known for being corrupt, but what if you're paid enough? So money's no longer an issue. Like let me give an example. The highest paid leader of a country in the world is in Singapore, and they get paid $1.6 million US per year, which is $134,000 per month. That's a lot of money. It really is, right? That's enough for someone not to be worrying about money. In Hong Kong, their prime minister gets paid $672,000 a year, which is $56,000 a month, right? And this is in politics, right? I'm not talking about you should give this much money to a pastor, but in the profession that you're in, there's going to be temptations out there, but if you give enough, they're not going to be tempted by these things, and they can just do their job the way that they want, right? You pay enough, and money is off the table, and you can focus on your job. right? So there was a happiness study done in 2010. Very, very psychologists across the board have agreed more money equates to more happiness to an extent. One of the most notable studies published in 2010 by Princeton University's Daniel Kahneman and Angus Deaton, and they have agreed that through their study they found that in America, the more money you make, the more happy you become until you reach $75,000, and it plateaus there. And it doesn't matter how much more you make, even from $75,000 to $1 million, the happiness remains somewhat the same. It's quite shocking, right? That even money has like a limitation, right? So, for me, I'm not saying that you should pay your head leader $75,000 a year. I'm totally not saying that, right? That's just the happiness study that's saying that there is going to be a limit towards it. But, I think it's very interesting that we should be thinking about this to that extent, to that level, right? It's something we need to think about because, recently, head leaders have been getting pay raises. This is true. I even in Korea, they're all getting pay raises. And for me I'm like, yeah, okay, is it enough for people to say that it's enough, right? Is it enough to take it off the table? So if you divide the pay by how many hours you're working, think about a head leader. How many hours? Do they work more than 40 hours a week? Absolutely. So you divide that pay by the amount of hours you work per week. I don't think it's as much as you guys think it is, right? And that's why I would even say that as a head leader in the past, head leaders need some guidelines too, is when is their break day, right? When is the day they take a break? When is the day, what are their office hours? There's a bunch of things that the world or Christianity has researched enough that they're able to allow their head leaders not to burn out and be able to run in the same church for 10, 20, 30 years, right? And I think that should be a possible goal that we have to think about too, right? So yeah, it was a very, very interesting topic, and I was thinking about it a lot too. It's like, yeah, what would be enough, right? Because definitely if I was not a pastor and I'm working in the world, $36,000 is not enough per year. For the cost of everything in Canada, Vancouver, stuff like that. Wow, that's crazy expensive, right? How much would actually be enough? And that's something that we really, really should be thinking about for the future. I'm not saying right now, for the future, because there are so many other things that we need to fix too. Like for instance, getting I talk all the time about getting all the head leaders equipped with all the skills necessary, because the more you pay, the more you have expectation. Right? But if we don't train the leaders and they don't have, and then we have more expectation because all we do is just pay them more, we'll get more disappointed. You know what I mean? So that's something that I was thinking about too. And that's something that I hope that everyone can really, we think about it for the future, not thinking only spiritually oh, you're a head leader, so you should be sacrificing your life. You shouldn't even be getting paid. That's not it. That's totally not it. You're going to lose your head leaders, and you're not going to have anyone else who wants to get into it. Right? It should be something where we're becoming much more professional in, but it's a topic I think that should be discussed. I'm not saying that this is the way it should be discussed, right? So that is an interesting topic. I hope it's something that you guys can think about also, all right? Yeah, so that it's interesting only because it came up in this week's message when it comes about money, and of course what happened with KJS this year too. Today we do have the practical word study. I will be going over that a little bit right after the first break. And Provi In The Media, we got 2 new articles that came out. One including KDH had an interview, very, very interesting interview. I took it was a question and answer, and I thought some of them was quite interesting how KDH was saying things too. But yeah. So yeah, very, very interesting. But let's first get into the first break of the day. All right, so let's get into today's word study. And every Tuesday we have the practical word study. And there's two big points I want to make because there's two parts of the message and two things that I want us to think a little bit more deeply about, right? Because, the first part of the message talked about being too comfortable, right? And, I think it's something that we have to understand what this actually means. Does it mean, we could oversimplify the message and just say, oh, being too comfortable means being rich, right? That we could oversimplify it and people are just going to say, oh, you can't be rich in Providence, but we have plenty of rich people. Then we start looking down on rich people because they are rich and it's against the message, right? What does it mean being too comfortable? And too comfortable, I think, is also, there's a spectrum of comfort because it really depends on your situation, right? Like, for instance, buying a Mercedes-Benz, we're going to look at that. If you're poor, if you don't have a lot of money, you're going to be like, oh, that's too comfortable. And the answer is, it's too comfortable for you because it's beyond your means, right? But if someone is rich, getting a Mercedes-Benz is not beyond their means. It is normal. Someone who is rich will go to a nicer restaurant. Is that too comfortable? No, it's not beyond. They don't think of it, that they're not like overburdened by it, like, oh, this is so comfortable. And they're not sitting there like, oh, all I want to do is just eat this type of food, right? So what I want to go over today is the word rich, right? And I think we need to look at it. We have to look at it in terms of how the Bible tells us and what the Bible's saying about what does it mean to be rich or what does it mean to be poor, right? So the first one, I think, is the one that we all understand. For instance, number one is, if you look at Matthew chapter 6, verse 24, we all know this: no one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money, right? Which means that, what is your absolute focus, right? The priority has to be number one on God, right? A master is the one that controls you, right? So money cannot be your master, because if money becomes your master, then if what God tells you is something that makes you lose money, then you won't do it because money is your master, right? So a master means the thing that controls you. So number one is when we talk about money, if the money controls you to do things that you shouldn't do, that's a big problem, right? But there are many people in the world who are rich and the money doesn't control them. It's just a fruit of the work that they're doing, and they're not sitting there like controlled by money. They're more of looking towards like their success or other different things, but the money's not the thing that controls them. Because you can see that when money controls someone, they start cheating, they start lying, they start doing things in an illegal way. So there's the first thing we see about money is, it's more of, does money control you or not, right? And that's something you can look at yourself. Are you controlled by money or not, right? You should be controlled by God, not money, okay? The second verse I want to share with you is 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 17 and 18. And it says, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. What is this? What is Paul saying to Timothy here? Command the rich. Number one is, do not be arrogant because you're rich. The richness doesn't make you better than other people. You cannot be arrogant just because you're rich, right? So there's one thing is like, that richness, that money shouldn't make you feel like because of the money you are better than other people, right? The second thing, which is a bigger one, is do not put your hope in this material wealth, because material wealth is uncertain. You can lose it in a second. So where's your hope? Your hope should be in God, right? But a lot of people, when they become rich or when they get money, and they don't have to be rich, just more money than they have, they start to put their hope in money instead of Christ. Through their money, they can get everything they want instead of through Christ. And this last point from 1 Timothy chapter 16, verse 6 says, God who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment, right? When you put your faith and your hope in Christ, what does it mean that we are rich because we put our hope in Christ? What kind of rich is that? It means that the hope and joy you receive comes from believing in God, because what does it mean to be rich? Being rich means you have more than you need, which is what is the number one thing? What makes you rich in Christ is salvation, right? You have salvation, right? That is the thing that we have that makes us rich more than having any other riches, right? Because if you think about this, like for instance, let's take a look at physically. If you are mega rich and the market crashes, but you still have like a couple $1 billion in the account, you're not worried. You know what I mean? You're not worried because you're rich. Oh, the stock market tanked, everyone else is in like calamity, but you're like, I'm fine. I got a couple billion in the bank account, not a big deal for me, right? That's what a rich person, they're not collapsing because of that. They're rich. What does it mean to be rich in Christ? Putting my hope in Christ. Being rich in Christ is no matter what we go through in life, we know what is the richness we received is the salvation that comes of receiving eternal life, not going to eternal death. And because we have that, we're okay. Yeah, I might not have got this job. I might not have got this or that, and I'm fine because I'm rich. Rich in what? I'm rich in salvation. I'm rich in love with God, right? And what God is trying to tell us here is what is true richness? Richness comes from your richness in believing and loving God, getting that salvation, that rapture that we have right now, that makes us rich, that no matter what happens in this temporary world, we know we're going to an eternal world. Another thing we can look at when it comes to richness is Hebrews 13:5. Keep your life free from love of money and be content with what you have, for he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you, right? Keep your life free from love of money, right? Love of money is different from having money, right? Like we talked about before, you can be rich, but you do it because you love money, or you're not going to have a love of money, you just have money. Those are two different things. You can have money not control you. You just have money, right? It's just the fruits of your efforts, right? Which means that as long as money doesn't control you, being rich is okay, which many can and many cannot control. Like just look at, there are some people in our churches that are really rich. However, you'll never know. They control it really well. Right? They're not controlled by the money itself. They're people that can really, they're in control, right? The next verse is Luke 12:33. Sell your possessions and give to the needy. Provide yourselves with money bags that do not grow old, with a treasure in the heavens that does not fail, where no thief approaches and no moth destroys, right? Well, this is about what? This is about, do you have the right focus on the spiritual things? Even though you may have money, do you still have that humble heart to serve and love God, to do the righteous things, right? And I'm going to say that I've met many people who have had that heart, who are wealthy and successful in the world and still volunteer for church, still do things for God, still donate when the church actually needs it. Yeah, which leads to my next verse of generosity. Proverbs 19:17, whoever is generous to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will repay him for his deed. Are you, like, even though you're rich, are you someone who is like, you love money so much you don't want to give it away? Or are you generous? Right? Another one is 1 Timothy 6:9. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. What's the purpose? If the purpose is to serve God and you become rich in serving God, that's completely different than, I just want to be rich. I want to have all the money. Completely different. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 18 says, they are to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share. Good works, generosity, sharing in your wealth too. It doesn't mean giving away your money. It means, sharing for the people that are in need, helping those that are in need. It doesn't mean everyone, you're going to start handing out money every week at church. No, it's to those that you are inspired. It's to those that you prayed and you realize, oh, this is the thing that I want to do, right? Last one I thought was a great verse we heard in the Beatitudes. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 3, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. What does it mean, poor in spirit, right? So someone who is poor is someone who doesn't have anything. They're in a situation where they need help, right? And when you think about it, those who don't think they have everything, right? Those that don't think they have everything, they're poor. These are the ones that cry out to God. These are the ones that really seek God. They're asking for help. They need someone to help them. They're asking for God to help them, right? That's what a poor person is asking for. Oh, can you please help me, right? And they're not too proud to beg. What does it mean, poor in spirit? It means the internal. People who recognize and realize the meaninglessness of life. People recognize that I can't. Who can save me? I'm poor in spirit. I have nothing. Only God can save me, right? They're the ones that reach out to God. They're the ones who ask God for what is greater and what is better, right? And that's something that I do think that we have to, even when these messages comes out, these types of messages come out, and it's very, very easy to oversimplify and just think about rich people. It's very easy to do that, but we have to be people who are more reasonable about this. Like I say, reasonable and rational, right? Just because it says money's hard to get into heaven, the answer is, if you think that way, it's probably because you can't handle that type of money. But those that can handle it, they're the ones doing fine. They're the ones who are still praying. They're the ones who are even more thankful. They're the ones who are generous, right? So it's something that we have to really think about and not try to oversimplify things too much. The second part of the message that I thought was important is, talking about not seeing God, but listening to the word, right? And I think it's something that we have to realize even more deeply what it means to listen, like listening to the word is seeing God. And I think this is a concept that seems to be a little foreign to people, right? So in the past, and we've seen this so many times, people just wanted to see Sun Snim. They wanted to shake his hands. They just want to get as many letters as possible. And the one thing that we have to look at, one of the most famous apostles ever, who did the most amount of work, more than anyone else, was someone who never saw Christ. But he was the most impactful. He evangelized the most people. It was Paul. He never saw Jesus. But once he was converted, he became the greatest advocate and greatest evangelist in Christian history, even more than the apostles that were next to Christ their entire lives. What does this mean? If this is actually possible, it means that someone who has never seen Christ, but just listens to the word deeply, inscribes it into their hearts, puts it into action, can become someone great in this history. And in some cases, even greater than the ones who lived during the time Christ was alive. In the future, no one's going to be able to see Son's name. No one's going to even get a chance because he's gone from this world. They'll only be able to see the videos. Right? So it's a significant part of history we have to realize. The time we're living in right now. If we are caught up in just seeing the Lord, we become like Thomas. We're still blessed, but he had to see to believe. In John chapter 20, verse 29, Jesus told Thomas, because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. And that's one thing we have to recognize in life, is that sometimes seeing is not always the best thing. People will disbelieve because they see something and misunderstand. Let me give you an example. Imagine seeing Jesus in a position that can easily be misunderstood, like he was with a prostitute. How many people would easily misunderstand that? Because our minds fill in the blanks. What would Jesus be doing with a prostitute? Oh, there's only one thing a prostitute does. Really? So the prostitute doesn't talk. The prostitute doesn't have feelings. The prostitute doesn't think about their meaning in life, but all they do is that one thing because that's their job? No. Like Sunseem too, when he was young, he went into brothels to evangelize, and church members saw him coming out of brothels from the Christian church when he was, when he was young. They automatically assumed he was doing something sinful. No one believed him. But even in Providence, there was another famous Christian pastor that came to Providence, and he said the same thing. He said, "Yeah, that was normal back then." Right? He did the same thing too. He went into the brothels. He said these girls would come out and they're completely naked, and he would preach to them. And the thing he said is, salvation did not belong only to the healthy, but to the sick. Everyone needs salvation, and that's why he did it too. And then people started to understand Sunseem a lot better. And I'm going to tell you pretty honestly, sometimes not seeing is actually better, because we see things and we don't know the context behind it. Right? Look at Joseph. running out of Potiphar's room naked, what would you be thinking when Potiphar's wife comes out screaming? What would Potiphar think? Easy to misunderstand because you saw it. Look at Jesus, cleared the temple courts, turned tables over. If you saw Jesus in that situation, what would you do? What would you think? Would you misunderstand? Would you give him the benefit of the doubt if that's the first time you saw Jesus? Or would you judge him and say that he wasn't the one? Or say, how can the man of God do that? And that's why sometimes it's better. Blessed are those who believe without seeing. Because you're not going to have the misunderstandings. It's like the same thing that happened to John the Baptist, Matthew 11:6, right? Blessed is the one that does not fall away on account of me. Sometimes it's harder to be there seeing, right? There's been stories in the past where Sunsim was in the bathroom taking a pee and someone got tested because, how can this man of God pee? And we're like, what? He's human. But that's how people thought. People were tested by these things. As funny as that sounds, it's a real thing. And I think that's something that all of us have to really take into consideration and understand, like, that is what's going on here too, right? Yeah. What we see is even better is when we hear the words, we're inspired by the words, and that's enough for us. We're like, yeah, that's it. That's what makes it, this is great. This is amazing kind of thing, right? And I hope it's something that all of us can really push ourselves to understand even better and even more, right? Blessed are those that believe without even seeing. And that's a powerful, powerful sentence right there. And that's where we have to get to, where even if we never see him again, we got to be like Paul, where we listen to the words so deeply, inscribe it deeply into our hearts, and it becomes a part of our daily life. Okay? Yeah. So that is a practical word study for today. I hope it's something that you guys enjoyed just as much as I have. And I hope it's something that you guys can think more deeply about. Leave a comment below if you have anything else to add to this too. Okay? So let's move into the second break of the day.
Yeah, rise up to the challenge, armed with the word in action, belt to the truth, fasten, shield of faith in one hand, sword of the spirit I'm slaying, no mercy I'm praying, everyone thinks I lost, but now I'm turning Super Saiyan, I gotta be new, gotta be great, I only gotta win this thing, fix the mistakes, fix who I am, all I wanna do is change, gotta be brave, gotta be tough, no more time for delaying, it's just training, all those times of pain, off, pushing my limits, only God, I'm trying to be better, I'm trying to feel God, enemies watching, they want you to fall, but you have to be better, you have to give it your all, every day I make myself, but I know it's not easy, this is the life I chose and I know my spirit's breathing, the battle has only begun and I may take damage, but if I fall, I only know how to do one thing, rise up to the challenge, armed with the word in action, belt to the truth, fasten, shield of faith in one hand, sword of the spirit I'm slaying, no mercy I'm praying, everyone thinks I lost, but I'm turning Super Saiyan, I'm Goku turning Super Saiyan, I'm charged up, now I'm playing, on the mount like Sinai, I can live with God like Wi-Fi, you see the word always praying, spiritual path where I'm staying, everyone thinks I lost, but I'm always with him, so you know I'm prevailing, protecting myself from Satan, armed with the truth, now my angels will shoot like, now I'm at my truest form, I'm trying to really be the greatest, the power level can't contain it, my energy is never draining, look how far we have made it, unlocking levels never hesitated, there's no try, you can just do it or don't, so fix your thoughts instead, everybody makes mistakes, just gotta take notes, can afford to do it again, life is so easy, if you just do what is right and just follow what's real, victory comes through skill, gotta stay on course, time to kill. Time to rise and shine, thinking of the past and never forget. God is Lord, by your side, holding your hand, dry your eyes, trust in the Lord every night and day. He'll never let you go, don't fall away. Be bold, be brave, and with all your heart, love the Lord to the end of time. Rise up to the challenge, armed with the word in action, held to the truth, fasten, shield of faith in one hand, sword of the spirit I'm slaying, no mercy I'm praying. Everyone thinks I lost, but I'm turning Super Saiyan.
Okay, so let's get into our final segment for today, and every Tuesday we have Provi In The Media, and I'm gonna have like 3 different things that I want to go over with you guys today. The first one is just kind of a announcement I saw in the news that Sunstream is going to, Netflix or NBC is going to be doing season 2 of I Am God, right? So there's a season 2 that will be coming out, which is pretty ridiculous, right? But the season 2 is going to come out, and I think it's going to be based on KJS. And I think the one good thing about this documentary coming out about KJS, the one great thing about it is we've already disavowed her. Like she's basically excommunicated. We want nothing to do with her, and we think that everything she did was absolutely wrong. And none of us are, actually trusting her anymore. And we even have a lawsuit for money embezzlement also. So that's one good thing I see is like we can say is like, hey, we totally are disconnected from her now because she did us wrong, right? So season 2, they are going to be making that. The second article that I read, which is quite shocking to me, right? So what happened is the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism and the Korean Creative Content Agency, they announced the selection of the 2023 Korean content subjects. So these are like people that will get awards, right? So government awards and certificates will be awarded to 38 people of excellent content who have contributed to the development of the Korean content industry this year. So they decided to award the presidential citation to NBC director Jo Sung-hyun. He's the one that did I Am God for Netflix. And the category is contribution to the development of the broadcasting and video industry. Like, can you believe that? They're gonna get an award for this, right? And think about this. This program entered the top 5 in Netflix's global viewing rankings, right? So basically, they're doing it because Korea received a ton of views for it. And it is assessed that major government agencies highly appreciated the director's production spirit. However, there is controversy over the provocativeness of the program I Am God on Netflix, right? So what's the controversy? The controversy is about sensationalism, right? Sensationalism meaning there's a positive effects of this program in raising social awareness of the problem of pseudo-religion, but there's a lot of criticism of sensationalism, right? And basically, what he's saying is he's saying that, this is going to happen because it's so popular. But here's the problems. And this is from Break News. And they said there's a couple problems with this. And this is why there's controversy. He said the first problem with I Am God, Netflix, is human rights violations. And what kind of violations are these? Well, CGM's public relations office said in the press release that I Am God, produced by NBC and released worldwide through Netflix in March of this year, clearly depicts new domestic religions, including CGM, over 6 episodes. It became an issue all over the world, and in particular, the trilogy or the 3 episodes dealing with Sunstream with nude videos and photos of female believers were repeatedly shown without mosaic processing, sparking controversy over sensationalism and secondary harm. Above all, the violation of women's human rights and portrait rights emerged as a serious problem as it was broadcast without the consent of the women who appeared in the nude video, right? And the criticism was it is inappropriate to show their naked bodies several times, and the victims were displayed with the voyeuristic gaze. So he says, let's look at the damage. And then the second thing he says, the damage cases claimed by CGM, right? So what they said, CGM said, most of the women appearing in the nude video are still members of the church. The video of some female church members was leaked due to deviant behavior of a former missionary leader, and even though the video was unrelated to Sunstream, it not only slandered him, but also had a negative impact on the trial, right? And then a second human rights violation was the actor. There was an actor was harmed by pretending to be an actual sex victim, and what happened was the production team, right, was supposed to subtitle, stunt, like a stunt double, body double. But instead they subtitled her as sex victim, former JMS reporter, without indicating that it was a double. So the double was mistaken by acquaintances as an actual victim, causing damage both mentally and as an actor. And it's said that the production team verbally promised at the time of signing the contract with the stunt double that they would protect the image rights and indicate that the actor was a double in the subtitles, but they didn't do it when it actually came out. And even when the stunt double protested, the production team's response was lukewarm. And because of legal matters, it's very, very difficult for the actor to receive any legal compensation, right? So, this is why after the broadcast on Netflix, the issue of damage caused by broadcast media also arose. And in discussion held last April, they said that I Am God was no different considering the ethics of representation and journalism. The Korean Women's Association said this about I Am God documentary. Excessive and explicit directing draws attention to the individual victims rather than solving the case, right? This Netflix content is the result of not being subject to broadcast review regulations for reporting on sexual violence and sexual harassment cases or reporting standards established by the Korean Journalists Association. Okay, this is what they said. This is what the Korean Women's Association said, right? So, yeah, it's very, very interesting how this is all coming out in the controversy there, but they're actually going to get an award for this, even though there's a ton of controversy, right? And one of the big problems that they said was that Netflix and the director basically accumulated a ton of capital through the success of the broadcast of the program, right? Why? Because news outlets pursue financial profits by guaranteeing high viewership and subscription rates. For this reason, if that's the whole purpose of making it, then there's a trend towards pursuing more stimulating things in the documentary to get more viewership, right? And he says, yeah, don't overlook the violations of the portrait rights and human rights of the women who appeared in these programs, right? So it's very, very interesting. They want, because they know if it's all about increasing viewership and ratings, then the program is going to be created with sensationalism to get more viewers, right? And the collateral damage is going to be human rights violations, right? So CGM has been appealing at this point in the peaceful protests, and they are asking, basically they're saying that to cancel, they're asking for this, they're demanding the government award to director Cho Sung-hyun to be canceled. Right? So one thing that was even kind of weird about I Am God, where did that come from, that title? Well, basically, Sun Snim had explained his own calligraphy called Thoughts Are God. So it's actually written Thoughts Are God. However, Netflix joked that it said I Am God. So the title was off the mark. It was different. It provided the cause of controversy over sensationalism and human rights violations. So that's the first article. So it's pretty sad that Korea is going to actually give them an award. So we got to pray for that, guys. Last one is there was an interview done with KDH, Kim Do-hyung, like the main guy who's anti-Providence, right? And the title of this is, it's brutal. It says, whether Sun Snim lives and dies in prison or I die, I will put an end to it. So basically he's saying I'm going to the full extreme, right? So basically KDH, we know he is a professor at Dankook University, and they actually have a nickname for him. They call him JMS Grim Reaper, right? So he went to CISA Journal Studio in Seoul, and basically they kind of interviewed him on what is his views on Sun Snim and Providence, stuff like that too, right? So here's a couple of the questions that I'll talk about, and I'll kind of give you my thoughts on them too. First question was, are there any regrets about the trial process? And basically he said the trial, the trial took 1 year and 2 months to reach its final trial ruling. And this is because Sun Snim filed a motion to recuse himself from the bench against presiding judge Sang Hoon Na, who is hearing the case on July 17th on the grounds that the trial was unfair, right? So he filed a recusal, right? And the intention is to change the judge in charge, right? So the court dismissed the motion for recusal, also dismissed the appeal, and also Supreme Court also dismissed the appeal, right? And he says, isn't it just natural that it's supposed to happen like this? Right? Because the prosecution believed that Sun Snim intentionally filed a motion to recuse himself from the judge in order to delay the ongoing trial, right? And basically KDH says, oh, they're just playing around, trying to protect him, right? Trying to protect him from his true nature, right? And people are going to know the true nature of Sunsim. The whole world is going to know the number of people complaining of damage is increasing, but when the trial gets longer, the victims hide. It's a waste of time, right? So it's very, very interesting. Like the judicial recusal actually had a very, very good reason, right? And one of the reasons, the biggest reason we know is, think about this, guys. This judge, right, Sang Hoon Na, did both trials for KJS and for Sunsim. The problem is KJS is sentenced for helping Sunsim in his crimes, but the problem is Sunsim's trial hasn't even ended. So it's so odd because what if Sunsim's, like, let's pretend he's innocent. Then what happens to KJS? You sentenced her already to jail for a crime that it hasn't even finished the trial yet, right? And that's why it's like, all right, he already thinks that Sunsim is guilty. So it was a very good reason, right? And I would be the same. I'd be like, there's no way I would want this guy doing my trial, right? The next question is, are there any additional victims? And KDH says, there are many unknown victims. However, they are cautious about speaking out. There is a reason. This is because the trial is taking longer than before, and during this period, Providence fanatics distributed personal information, including the victim's face and name, on social media such as YouTube. They worry that they too will suffer similar damage. Another funny thing is that they are using their enormous financial power to actively promote their image while hiding their true identity. Be careful. This is a truly vicious group, okay? So this is the thing that I find very weird. From the very beginning, he says, are there any additional victims? He says, there are many unknown victims. This is an oxymoron. How do you know that there's many if they are unknown? Makes no sense, right? Like, that makes no sense to me. There are many unknown, right? So it's like saying, oh, there's so many more victims. Who are they? Oh, we don't know. We don't even know where they are and what they're doing. But there are many of them. That's what it sounds like. It's ridiculous, right? And then he's kind of coming up with reasons why they're not coming out. And, the reasons sound pretty decent, though. Right? It's like, yeah, some of them don't, they don't want to be exposed, right? But then he says that this is because the trial is taking longer than before. But if there's a lot of people that wanted to come out, then they wouldn't know that this trial is taking longer than before until it takes longer, which means that in the beginning, they could all be coming out. But you guys do need to know that there was a point in time where there were many, all of a sudden they said, oh, there's 19 of these people. And think about this, in order for them to even be tried, they have to go through investigation. And the vast majority, only 3 of them. It's the Hong Kong, Australian, and 1 Korean. I think it's 1 Korean. Yeah, that's it. Of the 19 that they said, which means 16 of them already are like, they're not even worth going through. That the prosecutor's like, no, it's not enough. You don't have enough evidence or anything else like that, right? So that's why for me, it's like, and then he says that we have enormous financial power to actively promote our image. Well, interesting thing is, how are we promoting our image? We are all asked to make social media stuff, and no one's getting paid. Like, how are we actively doing this? I'm just not sure how we're actively promoting our image through enormous financial power. Next question. How did your relationship with Sunsim begin? So this is the most ridiculous one for me. He said, the bad relationship began right before I graduated from KAIST in 1995. Originally, there was a church I went to in Seoul. When I wasn't home in Seoul, I couldn't go to church. I had to decide which church to attend in Daejeon. At that time, my roommate introduced me to the church. That church was the Daejeon church. And at first, I thought it was a regular church, but the more I went to church, the more different the doctrines were from typical churches. It was strange. Listen to this, guys. Sunsim's sermons, which I first heard through the video, was full of harsh swear words and unspeakable obscenities. That's what he said about Sunsim's sermons and their videos, so we have all the evidence. I had a strong feeling that Sunsim was being deified, and after actually meeting Sunsim, I became convinced that this group was a pseudo-religious group and immediately left, right? So here's the one thing that we can all say, because we've all listened to Sunsim's sermons, like even seen his videos in the past. How many of you guys have heard his sermons that have harsh swear words and unspeakable obscenities? I've been in Providence for 25 years. I have never heard like harsh swear words and like unspeakable obscenities. And I think you guys can also testify too that I don't think you guys have ever heard that also. And some of you have been in Providence for 10 years, 5 years, 12 years. So if you've been here in Providence for 5 years, go ask someone who's been there for 10. Go ask someone who's been there for 20. Like, you don't think that we would think it's weird that if Sunstein was constantly cursing, saying harsh swear words and obscenities? You don't think that we'd be like, whoa, what's going on here? But we've all heard the sermons. It's not like that. Next thing, he says, what motivated you to help the victims? KDH responds, I came across several cases of damage, including female college students' accounts of sexual harassment harassment disclosure published in a religious magazine. Sunstein often said that his goal, he said often, so more than once, his goal was to make 10,000 people into heavenly lovers through sexual salvation. Okay, so he said that, Sunstein said this often. So once again, I implore to you guys, how many times have you heard that? Because he says, Sunstein said it often. Right? And he says, not only that, pseudo-preaching and swearing. And we're like, okay, where is this coming from? In other words, he announced that he would sexually assault 10,000 female believers. Really, Sunstein announced that. He announced that. And then he says, I came forward because I thought I couldn't leave it like this. So now he's a hero for all these women. The 10,000 women, I guess. Sunstein often said his goal was to make 10,000 people into heavenly lovers through sexual salvation. Have you guys heard that message? Or have you heard the message I've heard of? Like, we're not supposed to be with the opposite sex. Stay away from the opposite sex. Which one have you heard? How many of you heard that Sunstein announced he would, like he's here to assault 10,000 female believers? Right? So for me, I'm just like, this is ridiculous. He says he was in and out. Right? How long was he even in Providence for? I've been 25 years, never heard anything like that. Harsh swear words, obscenities, Sunstein announcing he wants to bring sexual salvation. Really? Really? So we already know this is all lies. The next one, he says, the reason they asked him, why, even though you went through so many hardships, why did you continue with your anti-Providence movement? And then he says, Providence are not normal people. These are bad people who seek out and seduce every college town across the country and extend their hands. Since Sunstein was doing all kinds of bad things, it was difficult for me as an adult to just ignore him. Victims continue to come forward, even though he says that they're unknown. In particular, victims of sexual crimes continue to emerge. It is difficult to ignore and move on. How much damage has been suffered? How can we tolerate the actions of those who are going to universities across the country to offer female college students to Sunstein? Really, is that what we're doing? We are the ones going to universities to offer female college students to Sunstein? Does that mean, well, then why do we evangelize guys? Even right now, why are we evangelizing guys? Why are we so into guys? Like trying to get more guys to be evangelized. Really? So that's what we're trying to do, offer female college students to Sunstein. That's what we're trying to do? Seducing people on colleges and such. It's ridiculous when I hear this. The next question. It is said that Providence will remain the same even if Sunstein is gone. And KDH's answer is, this is something we cannot guarantee, right? There is something I wish for. I wish for good, innocent people to no longer be deceived by Providence and suffer financially or physically. Okay? And then he says, the Bentley, BMW, Cadillac, and Porsche cars owned by KJS are worth over $700,000. What about Sunstein's brothers? People called, where did all that money come from? Nevertheless, fanatics are going out on the streets and collecting signatures for Sunstein. Right? Recently, videos criticizing the prosecution have been produced and distributed through YouTube, and it's estimated that there are still about 30,000 believers in Korea, Japan, and Taiwan. We must have the eyes of our hearts to avoid falling into pseudo-religions, including Providence. Do not be deceived by the appearance of people pretending to be kind, but understand their hidden intentions, right? So basically, this is what he's saying about us. We know what Sunseem is doing to all these people. He's committing crimes, and we have hidden intentions when we go to evangelize. So I'm going to ask you guys this question. How many of you guys are going out there with hidden intentions? To find girls to send to Sunseem so Sunseem can sexually assault them. Is that our hidden intention? Really? We're pretending to be kind? Really? We're pretending to be kind? That's offensive to us. I think it's offensive to me that he's saying that I have hidden intentions to send people to be sexually assaulted. Really? I'm not really kind. I'm faking it. And the thing that I find the most egregious in what he just said here is he's like, oh, look at all the money. KJS has over $700,000 worth of cars. Bentley, BMW, Cadillac, Porsche. That's actually something that helps us if he says that, because we have already excommunicated and disavowed her for doing the wrong. We have a lawsuit against her for money embezzlement. You can't use KJS as someone to say that, look at all the money they have because she embezzled it. That's why we're suing her. Right? So if you use her as your example of us having so much money and just using it to extravagantly live our own lifestyle, that's the wrong evidence to use. It's the wrong facts to use because we are against her. We are suing her for money embezzlement. Right? So using her name to come against us, it actually helps us instead because we've already disavowed her. We've already said she's wrong. We already want nothing to do with her. Just the fact that she has $700,000 worth of cars, over $700,000 worth of cars, that makes us more upset, frankly. To know she has a Bentley, a BMW, a Cadillac, and Porsche, yeah, that makes us upset. Makes us very upset. It makes us more against her because we didn't know. So when you think about this, KDH using KJS as an example of us, being deceived financially. No, yeah, we were deceived by her, but she's not someone we look at and say, oh, she's on Sunseem's side. She's against Sunseem. So, yeah, these are just some of the questions I found. And I looked at them and I'm like, wow, it's so ridiculous. From the harsh swearing, like obscenities that he's saying during sermons. He announced often that he wants to sexually assault 10,000. Announced often? Really? We're faking our kindness and we have the hidden intention to evangelize girls to send them to be sexually assaulted. Really? Like that's what he's saying about us. And that's why for me it's so ridiculous. The more I listen to this, I'm like, ugh. It's the more I understand how true Providence is, the stuff that he's making up. He's basically sensationalizing things so people think even worse about Providence, and that's what really gets me upset. But yeah, that was an article that came out, and it just doesn't make me very happy, and it shouldn't make any of us happy. All right. Either way, leave your comments below because that's a lot of information out there. And just listening to that interview that he did just makes me upset. But I'm just like, ugh. Any reasonable, rational person could look at that and say, this is crazy. Especially if you're in Providence, you've listened to Sunseem's sermons. Yeah, I don't think we've heard anything that he said ever. And I've been in Providence 25 years. All right. So there it is, guys. That is Provi In The Media. I hope it's something that helps you guys out, gives you that fire so that we can be those that can pray even better for Sunseem at this time. Okay? So that's Provi In The Media. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Have a wonderful and awesome Tuesday, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm